When you think about Highland Park, Michigan, very few people understand the profound impact that this 2.9 square mile city has had on the world. For the 100-year anniversary, let's take a look back at what brought about this amazing city.
There was a movement in the early 1900s, from about 1903 to about the early 20s, called the single-family home movement. Part of this is just a nostalgic view of living in a home that has just a big yard and a large amount of play space for children. But the other part of it is a resistance or response to what's happening in large cities where tenements are being built, and you have these large apartment buildings and row houses that are all connected to each other. Those are being built. Some people are resisting that. So Detroit is going to respond to this single family home movement by groups of people starting little housing developments in small towns and villages outside of the main cities. The state of Michigan is going to pass its Michigan Home Rule Village Act, also known as the Michigan Home Rule Cities Act, in 1910. And what it basically states is that some of these little small villages and townships that already exist can resist being annexed by large cities like Detroit. Henry Ford is going to begin his buying of land in this small township or small village at that point when he begins buying the land. Just about the time that the Michigan Home Rule Cities Act goes into effect, he's broken ground on his Model T factory. And by the time that his Model T factory opens, this is now the city of Highland Park. The evolving culture of the city of Highland Park in the late teens, 20s, up to the 30s is really built around the industrialism of Henry Ford.
Each man on the line became a specialist. He did one thing, and he did it perfectly, and passed the work along to the next man. Minute by minute, production was winning the battle against wasted time and wasted effort. Parts were fed to the workmen by gravity slides so they wouldn't have to stop and wait for new parts. Then they put the parts on moving conveyor belts. This was a great step forward because now they could regulate the flow of work and keep it moving at a constant rate of speed. And the conveyor belts grew longer and more complex as they moved the work from place to place in the huge shops. They became fantastic masterpieces of planning and engineering. But the battle against wasted time and wasted effort was being won. Cars began coming off the assembly line at the rate of 1 every 40 seconds. And what Henry Ford had foreseen happened. Mass production and the assembly line drove the price of the Model T down from $850 to $300. Now everybody could have one.
So Henry Ford's plant is, of course, pulling in all kinds of workers who are making a wage much higher than many manufacturers were paying at that time. People come from all over the world.
My great aunt and uncle from Greece, he actually started at Ford's in 1916, 1917, and he could speak 7 different languages, and he had a good job with Ford's. He would tell people what to do in their language, because there was people from all over the world that came here at Highland Park.
Well, that's an interesting part of our life, was when my father came here and why to Highland Park. Frankly, he was attracted by what is known as the $5 workday. And he was an immigrant from the Balkans, specifically Montenegro. And he had drifted around the country trying to find a place to work because he eventually had a very large family.
Now, African Americans, of course, are also a part of this group of people who are all coming to work at Henry Ford. And they're coming to work at many factories, including Henry Ford's. Henry Ford's, of course, is the more prized factory to work at because he's paying $5 a day. And he's paying that to all workers. He's going to break with the traditions of most of the factories at that time, which pay African Americans a lower wage than white workers. And he's going to begin to pay African Americans a wage equal to what white workers are being paid. Now, of course, African American workers are being paid this $5 wage, and they're working in some of the most dangerous jobs and dirtiest jobs at the factory, particularly the foundry, but they're being paid a wage much more than they'd ever be paid working as a tenant farmer or a sharecropper in the South.
With people pouring into the city from all over the world, the population in Highland Park grew by over 1,000% in the 1920s. Henry Ford was profoundly committed to education and created a culture of constant learning in Highland Park. He opened a trade school for boys at his Highland Park plant. The school started with 6 students and 1 instructor. Over the next decade, enrollment grew to nearly 3,000 students and more than 130 instructors. He also partnered with George Washington Carver to create a plant-based synthetic rubber. Henry Ford leased space in his training facility to start up a school called Lawrence Institute of Technology, which is now known as Lawrence Technical University. The Roper School for Gifted Students, which is located in Bloomfield Hills now, also got its start in Highland Park. Things were going so well that even Chrysler opened their headquarters in Highland Park in 1925, making Highland Park a hotbed for upward mobility. However, no one expected the stock market crash of 1929, and no one escaped its grasp.
Between, I would say, 1930, when I was born, and the beginning of World War II, which would have been the late 30s, it was very rough. My father, had, by that point, had obtained a job at Ford Motor, but he was laid off, as so many hundreds and thousands were, because of the economy. It was so difficult that he had to move from a house that we were living in as on a rental basis on LaBelle Avenue in Highland Park, west of Hamilton, to a storefront that was on LaBelle Avenue near Hamilton. And my first memories are of a space that would normally be occupied by a storefront was lined with beds. And the windows all covered with either newspaper or some kind of chalk to prevent people from looking in.
Although the city was devastated by the Great Depression for almost a decade, when America joined the fighting in World War II, the city came together to help our country fight the war.
During the war, World War II, there were drives for metal. All the scrap metal we could find in the city, we would assemble, and trucks would go around and pick it up, and they would become a part of the war effort.
I was drafted 18 and 19 years old in World War II. I was in the South Pacific and in the Marshall Islands, Kwajalein, Inuitak, Tarawa. We stood out in the ocean on the ship and blasted the Japanese. Americans had better firepower than the Japanese.
Lessons learned on the Highland Park assembly line helped us win a long and terrible war.
A gun every 26 minutes. A tank every 12 minutes. A plane every 9 minutes. Competing against men who often work at the point of a gun, who must produce or else, free American industry has pledged itself to deliver those tanks and planes and guns on time, ahead of time. This war is industry's war. It is labor's war. They realize that defeat means the unconditional and permanent surrender of all they are or hope to be. No sacrifice now will be too great for them, because sacrifice now will ensure final victory. We will win our battles on the firing line, because they will win their battles on the production line. They're fighting beside us now. Together, we will smash ahead to victory.
August 6th, they dropped the first atom bomb. The first sergeant came out to the field where we were training to invade Japan, and he brought up the paper headlines, Harry Truman dropped atom bomb, war may be over with. That was on August 6th. And August 9th, they dropped the second atom bomb. And on August 14th, the Japanese surrendered.
During the war, Ford, Chrysler, and many other manufacturers repurposed their automotive plants to build tanks, guns, planes, and other equipment that soldiers needed. One of the good things that came out of the war was that it brought the economy back. In the early 1940s, the need to transport military equipment across town quickly led to the building of the Davison Freeway. The Davison Freeway is the first urban freeway in the United States. With the war over and the economy back on track, Highland Park quickly became one of the premier cities in the United States.
Highland Park has this economic stability that not even the city of Detroit has. And so its schools are grade A. They are above what we see in a typical Detroit public school at that time. The typical Highland Park school is at the level of the outstanding schools in the city of Detroit. So Highland Park High is equivalent to Cass Tech in Detroit public schools, while most of the other Detroit public schools can't compete with Highland Park High. And they don't have the level of student performance, they don't have the level of teacher ability and programs that are within the school.
When you go back and look at the history of the school system, it was one of the best in the country. We had a full set of elementary schools.
Barber School, Thompson School, Angel School, Liberty School, and Ferris. It had a lot of good grade school and the good teachers.
All the schools, grade schools, had swimming pools in them, except for one. That was Thompson.
We learned how to swim in the third grade.
That's right.
And when we would get somebody would transfer in from Detroit,
They didn't know how to swim.
They didn't know how to swim. You know what was interesting about Highland Park, in particular when we talk about the schools? We walked to school.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, I mean, and it was a way by which neighborhoods came together and we came together as a people, and I think that's probably that Highland Park pride that we talk about. Because we made friends as we were walking.
Highland Park even had a guy in a little tractor type of guy with a brush, and he would clean the snow off the sidewalks so you could walk to school.
Highland Park offered more than any other school system in the country, because whatever the field you wanted to major in, Highland Park offered some assistance. If it was automotive, if it was golf, if it was music, if it was acting, Highland Park offered it.
Highland Park had everything: baseball, basketball, football, tennis, hockey. We had radio broadcast training.
Welding, wood shop. I took computer, advanced computer classes in high school.
And if you lived in Highland Park, you could go to the junior college tuition free if you were a resident of the community. If you weren't, you paid tuition to come there. And it was a very popular school. And if you went to Highland Park High School and graduated, or you went to the junior college and got a 2-year degree, there was almost an automatic admission to the University of Michigan.
I say we were very lucky that Henry Ford picked Highland Park to be his first assembly line. And Highland Park was treated very well by Henry Ford too. He made sure that Highland Park had the best of everything. And we did. We had the best schools. I mean, every child in elementary school learned how to swim. Who does that anymore?
Although the city was truly international, it was still segregated like many other cities at that time.
We never heard the word integration. We were integrated. Our neighborhood had, you name it, we had it. And we all lived next to each other. And so we didn't call it integration. It was our neighborhood.
We were like the melting pot. Highland Park had so many different sections of people, pockets of people from all over the world, not just in the United States, but all over the world. They come here.
Folks from all colors, creeds, and religion lived in harmony in Highland Park. We'd go visit my grandfather almost every Saturday night. And we never felt concerned about our safety among people of different colors and religions and so forth. And while there were different neighborhoods, there were always people who were cordial toward each other.
You learn to be friends with people from all over.
Well-to-do people are moving out of the city of Detroit into Highland Park. So people who have some kind of economic strength are leaving the city of Detroit and trying to move up to the city of Highland Park. There's eventually going to be a backlash in the city of Highland Park by a group of people known as the Bullet Club, and also their other name is the Black Legion.
8 years for the Black Legion. Come on, what's the matter with God? Nice dope.
Now, the Black Legion is really a racist organization. And so you have these two forces. One, this internationalism of bringing people from all over to come work at Henry Ford. And then, of course, this group of racist whites who want to keep African Americans from having a full piece of that pie, particularly housing.
Back in those days, blacks could not live between between Oakland and Hamilton. So that's why you see people will say the other side.
Highland Park had more apartment buildings that blacks couldn't move into. The one at the one at Pasadena and Hamilton, the one behind C.W. Moore's funeral home, the one across from the high school. Stop me when you want to.
It was a community that was just full of folks, just all kinds of nationalities, and we worked together, played together in that, but there was just, we knew that we couldn't live there.
My uncle that I came here and lived with, he was the first person of color to work for the school district in any capacity. Before I began with the police department, they had no other black officers on that department. And of course, I don't have to tell you that I had to pay the penalty for being numero uno. If I qualified test-wise, interview-wise, I got the promotion, never had a problem there. I spent 38 years there, and I eventually became the police chief. The ones that wasn't very kind to me, they didn't know how I was going to react once I had become the boss. But one thing I always kept on my mind, that no longer matters. You get the job done. That's primary. That's the most important thing. Not getting even with anybody. Treat everybody with respect.
Even though we know we were black, we knew we were white, Hispanic, it was not a black thing, it was not a white thing, it was a Highland Park thing.
During those times, you had various races of people living in the city of Highland Park, and they all got along with each other. And so a lot of people would look at that and say, well, wow, that is different in those times. But if you think about it, you provide a way for families to take care of themselves, and that is the American dream. I look at that Ford plan as birthing the middle class of the world.
Segregated housing didn't stop Highland Parkers from enjoying a lavish lifestyle. People in Highland Park drove cars while most of the world was still riding horses.
My parents had to get on a waiting list to get a house in the city of Highland Park. My mom had a newspaper one time, and the article was headlined, Highland Park, Michigan, the model city of the continental United States. And I never forgot that. This was one beautiful city when we moved here.
It was a beautiful city. Trees lined the city. I used to dream of living in Highland Park when I grew up. People dressed. People didn't walk around casually looking. They always dressed. The homes were well taken care of, beautiful lawns, tree-lined streets, and it was a mixture. There were some blacks, but they were kind of like prominent blacks. You knew they had a little bit of money.
What we tend to think of as suburbs today as places where people who have more wealth, more resources, they have bigger homes, and their school system is kind of a superior school system than some of the inner city schools. That's what Highland Park is from the 1920s through the 1950s. It represents all of those things. And that, it stays that way even after that, but it's really strongly, that's when that identity is really formed. African Americans who have some level of wealth and connections, they're trying to come into the city of Highland Park at that time. And so they're going to help transform Highland Park from that area where it was kind of a white enclave to a more cosmopolitan city that has African Americans as movers and shakers and people who have some wealth and influence and connections to make things happen. All of these stimuli come out of Highland Park because Highland Park has already established itself in its educational system, the schools, in its economy based on the manufacturing, and then later the retail that comes after that. It's going to, and of course the single family homes that exist in Highland Park, it's going to establish itself as a giant for upward mobility for first all workers at Ford, but eventually for particularly African Americans.
It was like a cottage. It was real nice. Everything was nice. They cleaned the alleys with water trucks. They swept the streets every day. They sprayed it every day, and everything was real nice.
We used to play in the alley, basketball, baseball, football, hockey. The alleys were so clean you could eat off them.
The trees were manicured, and that was a part of the service. That was a part of the DPW department here in the city of Highland Park. And so, you look back at that and you're like, wow, this was something that we kind of thought happened everywhere, but as you got older and you start, traveling a little bit and you have conversations with people, those type of things didn't exist.
My dad was on the bus one day going to work, and he heard these two men talking about a city called Highland Park that had free college. My father said, I have to find out where that city is. He said, I got 5 kids, so So I have to find that city. We found that city, he saved his money, and we bought a home in Highland Park.
It was a city with 40-some thousand people, recreation activities, great schools, great neighbors, and there was a sense of unity, a total sense of unity. Neighbors were neighbors on the street that I grew up and the streets around where I grew up. We knew everybody.
Everybody knew everybody. There was plenty of police, plenty of fire men, just every store. There was vibrancy, there was electricity going on. It was just a very good, warm feeling and a safe feeling.
There was a store on the corner of Lincoln and Kendall that was owned by a black man. His name was Lee Arthur Hall. I'll never forget him.
From the expressway to Oakland, there had to be 6 stores. Ann's, Smalls across the street over here on Trumbull, AB's or Ted's on Thompson and Grand. Then there's one at the corner of Grand and Lincoln.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Mr. Hall.
Then I'm getting there. I'm getting to Mr. Hall. Okay.
He had nothing in this stuff.
Then you had Sharky's up on
Woodrow Wilson.
No, Woodrow Wilson.
See, one thing about Mr. Hall, if you ain't got it, boy, just come on back. I have it for you on one can of beans. You got to come out and get that.
What do you Lincoln?
Yeah, right.
Lincoln and Trumbull.
He had nothing in his stuff.
Yeah.
Lee Arthur Hall supplied the neighborhood with a telephone and with all kinds of favors for the family. For instance, we didn't have a telephone. Lee Arthur Hall had a telephone in his grocery store. So when someone was trying to contact my sisters in particular, they would call that number because that's the number that my sisters would give to their friends. And he'd come out of the store and yell, "Hey, Mickey, your sister's got a telephone call." And they used that form of communication until they could afford their own telephone.
The growth and prosperity the Highland Park experienced for many years allowed the city to provide services that were unprecedented. This gave Highland Parkers a sense of pride that still burns bright today.
So now Highland Park has 2 of the major industrialists or auto manufacturing here in the city, and then that's going to also bring retail companies here. And of course, one of the major retailers that's going to come here as a response to what the workers are being paid here is going to be Sebastian Kresge. And then that's going to be followed by Sears and Roebuck. And so you're going to have Sears and Roebuck. You're going to have another company called Highland Appliance. They're going to come here. They're all coming here because you have this group of people who are being paid a relatively high wage. You have single family homes that they can afford to stay in. And they're, of course, building wealth in the ownership of these single family homes, which are rising in its equity.
During the 60s, it was the best place to be. You had a vibrant downtown. You did not have to leave Highland Park for anything.
Highland Park was a hustling, bustling city. There were businesses up and down Woodward, up and down Hamilton.
There was parts place, cleaners, appliance stores. Good Housekeeping was on the corner.
Dairy Queen, we had stores, we had resale shop, we had, people talk about the bank that was on the corner here. That was before the 60s though, but we had, all types of businesses.
And then all the hotels we had, Howard Johnson's. What were some of the other ones?
Holiday Inn, we had the Cavalier, the Monterey, and then
Remember the hotel with the swimming pool in the basement? You could go downstairs at the bar and watch the people. They would dive in. You could see that glass wall where you could see the people swimming.
While you're at the bar having a drink. Yeah.
Highland Park had it all. We had all the restaurants, all the stores. I think we had about 3 or 4 hospitals, with Highland Park General being the largest hospital.
Highland Park had 7 movie theaters. In this city, 2.9 square miles. This was the happening spot. People in Highland Park grew up with a work ethic. You wanted to attain certain heights because those are the type of people that lived in your neighborhood.
The number of talented people that have come out of Highland Park is impressive. From championship teams and professional athletes to musicians and movie stars, Highland Park has produced them all. One of those people was Bobby Joe Hill. Bobby Joe Hill was a 5'10" point guard from Highland Park that led the Texas Western College basketball team to win the NCAA national title in 1966. With all 5 starting players being black, Texas Western's win over the top-ranked Kentucky team is considered one of the most important wins in college sports history.
When Bobby played basketball and when they won the national championship, everybody in Highland Park was happy.
We proud.
Proud.
We proud.
As the city of Highland Park beamed with joy over Bobby Joe Hill, racial tension in Detroit continued to simmer, and in 1967, it reached its boiling point.
Somebody said it's a raid. And usually when there's a raid, we jump out the side window. But they had the side window covered too. We said, well, we'll go out the back door. They had the back door covered, so we couldn't get out the back door. So we say, well, somebody said, we'll charge the front door. You can't get everybody. Somebody gonna get away. And so we running down the little hallway, getting ready to go down the stairs, and the police shot that shotgun. Y'all have seen the brothers falling and sliding and slipping and stuff, trying to stop. And so when it came down the stairs, 12th Street, all the bars was, people was out in the bars, the restaurant, like everybody in my was out there. So the paddy wagons were taking people away, you know. As we get in the paddy wagon, somebody threw a bottle. And that's when it started.
Let me tell you a little bit about 1967. No one, at least I wasn't expecting anything to happen. I got a call from our police department talking about the problems that occurred in Detroit the night before. And I, in effect, said, how the hell didn't we know? He said, nobody told them. And why didn't they tell them? I blamed it on the mayor of Detroit, that he had not notified us that there was a problem in Detroit. And we didn't learn about it until Sunday morning.
They was trying to get themselves together right there on 4th and Davidson, and they were gonna come down 12th Street and wipe everybody out. But it was too late. It spread it. And then it got spread to the east side, Gratiot and all that. It was on then.
That being said, what then occurred never touched Highland Park.
Did they get into Highland Park?
No, they didn't get into Highland Park.
The community in Highland Park never rioted. They didn't rebel. They didn't loot. They didn't do any of the things that some were accused of doing in Detroit. We had built then, I think, a trust in the city. And the black community was bringing food to the police department where these guys were working day and night to prevent anything happening in Highland Park. Not one thing happened in Highland Park during that period of time except for one garage which was burned on the perimeter of the city on the line with Detroit.
Although the riots were not good for national race relations, it was an outward manifestation of black people's desire to have more control of their lives and their communities. Highland Park was one of the first cities in the country to give a black person a chance to help run the city.
When I became mayor, that left a vacancy on the city council. There was no black person on the city council. Bob Blackwell who was a black candidate, had lost in his effort to become a councilman. He was the highest vote getter that didn't make it. So we selected Bob as the councilman to replace me.
Robert Blackwell not only became Highland Park's first black city council member, he went on to become the city's first black mayor. Some folks believe that the '67 riots are the reason that so many people moved away from the city of Detroit and subsequently Highland Park. But that's not entirely true. Ford had ramped down production at the Highland Park plant in the 1950s to focus more on modern plants. And there were other circumstances leading people to move away as well.
Because the federal government's National Housing Act of 1934 is going to subsidize the building of these homes, these people are getting a home that might have been $10,000 or $15,000. That home is now $100,000 or $80,000. And you're able to use the equity in that home to start businesses, to send your children to college. So that's what's going on. So you have the national housing trend helping to establish the suburbs, and you have even the manufacturers building their larger factories and their larger operations outside in the suburbs. Followed by the factories and the housing are the retail institutions. So the retail institutions are now, instead of building the stores like Sears had done in the city of Highland Park and Kresge's had done in the city of Highland Park and the city of Detroit, now they've come together to build what are known as suburban malls.
This is Northland, with space to park exactly 9,984 cars. Here in a garden setting, 110 stores and services spread out among colorful promenades with beautiful flowers and unusual fountains.
Up until a few years ago, tenants weren't looking in urban areas to expand. They were staying just outside of the urban areas and saying, well, you know, we're just going to have the urban population come to us.
So now people are even shopping outside of the city that they live in. And so they're going to pay a price for the building of the suburbs, including the malls that are in those suburbs.
The smaller businesses, be it eateries, factories, clothing stores, no matter what it is, when you lose that amount of people, they are forced to shut down.
And that's going to, of course, then begin to affect the educational system, because the educational system is financed through the taxing of the businesses and the residents in the community. As the higher income residents move out and the companies move out with them, then the tax base that's supporting the school systems and all the other civic institutions like the library, particularly McGregor Library, we're losing the funding foundation for those places. And so at some point, these schools are going to be challenged.
Not only were the residents, retail stores, and manufacturers leaving the city, banks were making it tough for new businesses to set up shop in Highland Park.
Up until a few years ago, bank financing was pretty impossible in urban sites. So you couldn't get bank financing unless you had a 100% foolproof, guaranteed project. The banks would not even look at you.
Redlining, predatory lending, we were in the midst of all of that. The last time that we met with the bank, they came to my office. They're sitting in my 5,000 square foot office in my 40,000 square foot building on the 8th floor, at the top floor. They're gonna sit in my beautiful office and tell me and my partner, well, if he's not in the partnership, we'll lend you some money. Talking about me. And there's no reason for me not to be in the partnership because I'm the most financially stout person probably sitting at the table. Wasn't anything wrong with my credit, nothing wrong with my financial statement, nothing wrong with the cash in my bank. But they wanted me to I would not agree to transferring over $250,000 cash to her bank. I said, why? What's that got to do with you lending us the money? The numbers are here. In another part of town, we were able to get 125% loan to value. In Highland Park, we could only get 60 to 65% loan to value. In other words, if the building was worth $1 million, they would only give us $650,000. Here, they would give us $1.25 million somewhere else. Same buyers, same guys, same deal, location.
Even though things were looking bleak for the city of Highland Park in the 80s, the city was able to stay afloat because of the tax base created by the Chrysler Corporation.
My worst fear was that Chrysler was going to move. Unfortunately, my first year as mayor, I met with Lee Iacocca. I still remember like I said, September 8th, 1992, 8:30 a.m., Chrysler headquarters. And when I and Lee Iacocca sat down, the first thing he asked me, do you have any idea why I asked you to be here? I said yes, because basically you're looking at packing up the bags and moving the Chrysler Corporation out of Highland Park to Auburn Hills. And he basically asked, how did I realize that? It's a common sense. I knew at that time the way things were going, not just in Highland Park, but in the whole Detroit area. Major corporations were never going to land again in small cities because bigger cities were beckoning. And there's things that the cities could do that we could not do as far as tax abatements.
Highland Park had to agree that we could move our headquarters out of Highland Park into Auburn Hills. And it was a matter of how much we would pay for that.
Highland Park is in the middle. And they had to go through Highland Park to get released to even go to Auburn Hill, which the city granted. They pretty much bought their way out.
We made two payments to Highland Park. One was for $14 million and one was for $90 million several years later. The $14 million, as I recall, included a $5 million payment to Highland Park to incorporate a company called the Highland Park Development Corporation, which we nicknamed DevCo. It was a tax equalization payment that we made to make up for the taxes that they would lose. But Highland Park decided to use that money to operate the city and not to shut the city down and find a home for the services that it was providing. It should not have made that decision, in my humble opinion. I think that Highland Park, once it started losing its businesses, once it started losing its manufacturing base, it needed to reassess its viability as a city, and it never did that.
Although some people feel that Highland Park should have folded the city and walked away after Chrysler left, that was a difficult thing to do politically, because if Highland Park folds, then Hamtramck will automatically be annexed to Detroit as well. Highland Park is also a highly important historic city, and no one wanted to throw it away.
Highland Park had been, how can I say, on the high ground for many years, and that was just a crushing blow. My job, particularly at that time, mayor then, was letting the people in the community know, look, this is what's happening. We're getting ready to lose 80% of our budget. We're going to make some changes.
When you lose two big tax bases in a city, it's going to hurt a city. I don't care how big the city is.
Chrysler left us. Sears left us. You know what I mean? Sydney and Crandall, jewelry stores up on Woodward. A lot of stores left Highland Park.
And while all the positive things were leaving, a lot of negative influence started coming into our community. You know, the drugs came in, crime started going up.
But a lot of the crime that Highland Park get it from Detroit. Detroit is coming to Highland Park and start a whole lot of problems here. They're trying to solve the problem here now, but it's kind of rough when you haven't got the money and the police department, to take care of business.
With the manufacturers gone, the population in Highland Park quickly began to decline. Many of the buildings have been vandalized beyond repair or torn down. The once beautiful schools that were widely considered the best in the country now lay in ruin.
I think the question that a lot of people, even people all over the world will want to know, what happened to Highland Park?
Economics. Okay, you need dollars to run a community like you need dollars to run your home, and eventually we cannot do that because we didn't have the tax base to support us.
And that tax base is very important to support the schools.
With student enrollment dropping fast, the community college closed in 1996, and in 2015, Highland Park Community High School closed as well.
After 100 years, we don't have a high school in our city. So now Highland Park don't even have a high school. The kids that live in Highland Park got to get bused to Detroit to another school. That's a shame, and I'm hoping that one day people open their eyes and see that everybody got to have a school in the city in which they live, because transportation is not that easy.
Faced with some of the toughest times in the city's history, the citizens of Highland Park are stepping up to make a difference in the community. From the people and businesses that have been around for years to the new residents just looking to help, the citizens of Highland Park are taking action to restore this once beautiful city.
I decided as a citizen of Highland Park to actually do something about what was going on. I had a baby boy, his name is Jacoby Rye, and he got killed by a hit-and-run driver on Avalon Street, September the 23rd, 2007. So I basically decided I would clean up this block. We're raising funds every day. We get donations from all over the world. We've had a successful Kickstarter where we had a goal of $241,900. And we actually raised $243,691 in 30 days. A lot of times people move to a place that's beautiful instead of making the place that they're in more beautiful.
We just want to beautify this city. And so I want to be a part of this beautification, not saying that we want to wait for gentrification to come in and beautify us. We want to beautify ourselves. I want to be a part of that beautification, of making Highland Park beautiful, and being a business owner here. Now that I own this space and own my own space, I feel like I own this side of Highland Park, so I'm going to definitely make it beautiful.
Once you start caring about a space, other people will see what you're doing and they will respect the space as well.
See, like those lots over there, all we really got to do is cut the grass and edge up the grass, and we're going to be A1. Now, there's abandoned buildings here. Some of them may need to be torn down, maybe, but most of them can be fixed because that's what they do. They fix these things. So one day somebody's gonna fix all this stuff and it's gonna be a little better. But what I call that, what you see is not a bomb dropping, but opportunity. That's real estate opportunity in the making, because if it didn't look like that, I probably couldn't buy it.
Something good could come from this. And so this is a place where really the Phoenix is rising.
We know that there are big companies and big businesses that can come in and buy buildings and build businesses, and that's okay. That's okay, as long as we get a part of it, as long as it puts some of our people back to work. It's so much that we have to learn, but Highland Park is a small little town.
I said this town, Highland Park, 2.9 miles, is small enough to really go ahead and kind of change it around and really do something good.
Instead of us working so separately in this community, we got to work together, because it's only 2.9 square miles and we don't have enough community meetings.
Highland Park is small enough that we can do the job, but you can also get to know the people.
Highland Parkers are They're more of a small town. They're like a very small town, just happens to be in the middle of a large city of Detroit. But Highland Parkers have a much more of a family attitude.
The people that live here in Highland Park are great folks.
From Arts in the Park, Parker Pride, and the Community Barbecue Cook-Off, to the Highland Park Business Association's annual music festival on Woodward Avenue, Highland Park still has plenty of traditions to be proud of. Right now, the city is struggling, but it's in the midst of an economic wave moving through Detroit, and there is nowhere for this city to go but up. Alumni from around the world still meet and reminisce about the spectacular difference this small city made on the world. With the people of Highland Park coming together, fired up and ready to go, there is only one question left to ask. What will it take to bring this city back?
The institutions, the businesses, and the residents. Those things came together to make this a community. And it's going to take those things, the businesses, the residents, and the institutions, especially the educational institutions. It's going to take those things to recreate a new Highland Park.
It's different today. Tenants will go in high-quality shopping centers in urban areas if you give them two things. We promise our tenants is we're going to go and we're going to help fight your taxes. It's going to be reasonable. It's not going to be zero taxes, but it's going to be reasonable. And we're going to give you security by putting a police station on site.
Right now, we've got investors coming and bringing proposals to our city. And honestly, I think our city is going to be fine.
The future is going to be outstanding. I think part of that is driven by the resurgence of Detroit and coming down both from the north and the south, and it's coming towards Highland Park, and Highland Park is ripe and ready now to be redeveloped.
I'd venture to say, in 2 to 4 years, you'll see big progress in this city. We are working diligently with contractors and developers, and stay tuned.
It's getting a lot of attention now, not just from other developers in the Detroit area, and not just Michigan, and not just US. We've been contacted from some people from out of the country who are looking at Highland Park because it's so well positioned along the highway system, along Woodward Avenue, right in the midst of Detroit where development is coming both ways.
Location, location, location.
We got it.
You can't get around us. And that's the key to Highland Park.
You're connected to 696, to the Davison Freeway, to 75, to John Lodge. It all comes to Highland Park.
The other word that has to be thrown in there is leadership.
The way ahead, it seems to me, has to begin with politics. You have to begin with people that are dedicated to rebuilding the cities and the jobs in this country.
The mayor and city council and the people have to work together.
See, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take people who genuinely care and whose heart is in it, not money, none of that kind of stuff. None of that stuff matters. You just do the thing. Do the thing. All the rest of whatever is going to follow it.
The city's going to come back to life. It might not come back to life as I remember it or the neighbor down the street remembers it, but it's going to come back to life.
I have great pride in having been born in Highland Park, and I would be just absolutely ecstatic to see the city of Highland Park come back to the glory it enjoyed in its earlier day, because it really is a marvelous community, and it's one that deserves a bright and shining future.
We always look forward. We never look back and say, you know, boo-hoo, it was bad and it'll never be the same. We always look forward and want to serve the people that are there. Our whole goal is to bring quality retail to the city residents and really start off with basic needs: food, banking, prescription medicine, groceries, doctor's offices. So we want to make sure that we cover the basics first. Then you can get cute after that.
We walk by faith and not by sight. And so we do believe that Highland Park, there is still life in Highland Park. We're not turning the lights out, but we're turning the lights on, and we're turning it brighter to make it a better Highland Park.
Highland Park is a never say die city, and that's what I like about the people in Highland Park. We're fighters, we don't quit.
We will and can have a number of small businesses, a significant number of assorted and diverse types of businesses. It has to be the coming together of those three components: the residents, the institutions, and the businesses. And that can and will create the new Highland Park.
My experience dealing with the city of Highland Park has been a very pleasant experience. I don't have anything bad to say. Loving people, caring people, interesting people.